Have you ever wondered what happens when the mask doesn't just slip, but permanently disintegrates into ash? There is a horrifying hidden final stage to a narcissist's life, a dark progression where their very mind begins to rot from the inside out. We are going to explore this terrifying decay today, and by the end, everything you have endured will make perfect sense. You have likely seen the arrogance, the relentless gaslighting, and the sheer cruelty that define their everyday existence. But beneath that exhausting performance, a devastating biological and psychological collapse is slowly taking root. This is not just them getting older or becoming slightly more bitter. This is a profound, irreversible breakdown of their mental core. For decades, they have constructed a rigid, delusional fantasy world to shield themselves from their own suffocating shame. They demanded endless validation to keep that fragile delusion alive, feeding off your empathy and draining your spirit. But reality is relentlessly patient. It always catches up, and when it finally crashes into them, the devastation is absolute. Imagine spending your entire life running from a mirror, terrified of the hollow, empty void staring back at you. As they enter their final chapters, they can no longer run. The energy required to maintain their grandiose illusions starts to completely deplete. Their physical health wavers, their social circles vanish, and the terrifying silence of isolation creeps in. This is where the cognitive rot truly begins to manifest. The brain structures that they use to manipulate, charm, and control others start to physically and psychologically degrade under the sheer weight of a lifetime of cognitive dissonance. They are no longer sharp. The calculated, sophisticated predator you once knew is slowly dissolving into a state of sheer panic. I want you to really sit with that thought for a moment. All the pain they caused you, all the sleepless nights where you questioned your own sanity, it was all to delay this exact, horrifying inevitability. They used you as a human shield against their own mental decay. Now that you are gone, or no longer playing their twisted game, they have no defense mechanism left. What does this rot actually look like from the outside? It looks like escalating paranoia, a desperate clinging to grievances from 20 years ago, and an inability to process new information. They become trapped in a loop of their own victimhood. The charm that once lured people in has entirely evaporated, replaced by a bitter, venomous rage that alienates everyone. It is deeply unsettling to watch someone unravel to this degree. You might feel a pang of that old empathy tugging at your heart, wondering if you should step in and save them. But you must understand that this collapse is the natural, unavoidable consequence of how they lived. You cannot rescue someone who is actively drowning in a toxic swamp of their own creation. This journey we are taking together today is not about cheering for their downfall. It is about understanding the intense, psychological mechanics of their destruction so that you can finally find peace. By witnessing their agonizing final stage, you will realize how incredibly powerless they always were. The terrifying monster under the bed is just a shadow on the wall. You survived their reign of terror, and you emerged with your humanity completely intact. They, on the other hand, are facing a psychological execution of their own making. Let us pull back the curtain on this terrifying final act. It is time to look at the undeniable truth of what happens when a narcissist's mind simply gives up, rots away, and collapses into nothing. To grasp why their mind deteriorates so severely, we have to understand the architecture of their brain. A narcissist does not process reality the way you do. Their brain has been chronically hijacked by defense mechanisms, constantly scanning for perceived threats to their inflated ego. This perpetual state of high alert takes a massive, invisible toll on their cognition. Think of their mind like an old, overworked computer engine running a massive, corrupt software program. That software is their false self, the elaborate lie they present to the world. It requires an astronomical amount of psychological RAM just to keep it from crashing. As they age, their cognitive hardware naturally slows down, but the corrupt software demands more power. This creates a terrifying systemic failure. They can no longer keep their lies straight. The complex webs of manipulation that they use to weave with effortless grace start to become sloppy, obvious, and embarrassing. They repeat the same tired stories, hoping for the admiration they used to get, but instead, they are met with awkward silence or blatant eye rolls. This loss of cognitive control triggers an intense, agonizing internal panic. The narcissist begins to feel the walls of reality closing in on them. They subconsciously realize that their false self is fracturing, and the terrified, deeply insecure child hiding beneath it is exposed. To protect themselves, their brain doubles down on delusion, rejecting facts entirely. You might notice them inventing bizarre new narratives about the past, aggressively rewriting history to paint themselves as the ultimate martyr or the unsung hero. It is not just simple gaslighting anymore, it is actual delusion. Their brain is frantically patching the holes in a sinking ship, choosing utter madness over the excruciating pain of genuine self-reflection. The prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for impulse control and emotional regulation, becomes exhausted. Without the energy to suppress their darker impulses, their true nature bleeds out uncontrollably. They snap over the smallest inconveniences. The mask slips not just for a moment, but stays off for days, revealing a nasty, volatile, hollow creature. As the mental rot spreads, they lose the ability to read the room. The subtle social cues that they once weaponized are now entirely beyond their grasp. They act inappropriately, alienating the few people left who still tolerate them. They become profoundly emotionally isolated, trapped in an echoing chamber of their own paranoid thoughts and deep, unresolvable bitterness. This is the tragic paradox of their existence. They spent a lifetime demanding absolute control over everyone around them, yet they cannot even control the decaying chemistry of their own mind. They are prisoners of a psychological war they started and can never possibly win. It is a slow, agonizing slide into a very specific kind of dementia born from absolute denial. If you are watching this happen from a distance, it can be deeply disturbing. You are seeing the complete unraveling of a human being. The grandiosity that once intimidated you now just looks pathetically sad. The cutting insults they throw now lack their former sting. They are just the desperate flailings of a mind drowning in the consequences of its own toxic choices. But you must remember, this rot is entirely self-inflicted. They chose manipulation over connection. They chose a fraudulent existence over authenticity. The human brain is designed to connect, to empathize, to grow through vulnerability. By starving their brain of these vital emotional nutrients for an entire lifetime, they guaranteed their own psychological starvation. There is always a distinct moment, a sudden turning point where the decay becomes visible and impossible to ignore. It usually happens after a major loss of supply. Maybe a primary partner finally walks away for good, or they lose the career that gave them their status. In that sudden vacuum of validation, the fragile scaffolding of their entire personality collapses. Without external mirrors to reflect their false greatness, the silence in their mind becomes utterly deafening. The panic sets in like a physical sickness. They frantically reach out, trying to hoover old victims, sending unhinged messages that oscillate wildly between pathetic, sobbing pleas and explosive, hateful rage. It is a desperate bid for any reaction at all. Imagine watching a spider whose web has been completely swept away. Instead of building a new one, it just runs erratically in circles, biting at the air. This is the narcissist in the collapse phase. The calculated moves are gone, replaced by pure, reactive instinct. They become their own worst enemy, burning the few bridges they still have left in a fit of pure madness. They might suddenly latch onto bizarre conspiracy theories or extreme ideologies. But because these prepackaged worldviews offer them a convenient narrative where they are the enlightened victim and everyone else is an ignorant enemy. It requires zero emotional accountability. It is the ultimate lazy defense mechanism for a mind that is too exhausted to face reality. You will witness a stark deterioration in their physical appearance and personal hygiene. The vanity that used to define them slowly fades away, not out of newfound humility, but out of absolute psychological fatigue. The false self requires constant grooming, both mentally and physically. When the mind begins to rot, the body naturally mirrors that internal desolation. This is the moment they often turn against their most loyal enablers. The flying monkeys who blindly supported them for years suddenly find themselves on the receiving end of the narcissist's venom. The paranoia takes complete control. The rotting mind trusts no one, sees betrayal in every shadow, and viciously attacks the hands that are desperately trying to feed them. It is deeply chilling to realize that they would rather destroy their entire world than admit a single flaw. As their mind deteriorates, their need to be right becomes a literal matter of life and death in their twisted psyche. They will happily burn their own house to the ground if it means they get to stand in the ashes and proclaim that they controlled the fire. If they cannot dominate through success, they will absolutely dominate through pity and victimhood. They weaponize their declining health or their mental instability, using it as a heavy guilt trip to trap anyone foolish enough to stay. It is their final, desperate parasitic move. They feed off the pity, mistaking it for the love they are utterly incapable of feeling. And then it stops. Just like that, the grandiose outbursts taper off into a cold, menacing silence. This is the turning point where the active fight against reality transitions into a dark, passive surrender to their own delusions. They retreat into a dark mental fortress, pulling up the drawbridge, locking themselves inside a solitary confinement of their own making. You are no longer dealing with a person in any meaningful sense. You are dealing with the shattered remnants of an ego that has survived long past its expiration date. The terrifying, godlike figure that once cast a shadow over your life has shrunk into a frail, terrified creature hiding in the dark. The monster is gone, leaving only the rotting shell behind. The collapse stage is where the horrific reality of their choices violently cashes out. There is no redemption arc here, no tearful epiphany where they realize the error of their ways. Instead, their worldview shrinks down to the size of a tiny, suffocating box. The mind that once imagined itself ruling the universe now obsesses over petty grievances and imagined slights. Their memories become fragmented and entirely weaponized. They might completely forget the horrible abuses they inflicted upon you, not as a conscious manipulation tactic, but because their decaying brains simply deleted the evidence to protect the core delusion. They genuinely believe they are the ultimate victim, and this delusion is baked right into their rotting synapses. The isolation they experience now is profound and terrifying. One by one, friends, family members, and colleagues have quietly slipped away, exhausted by the endless drama and toxicity. The narcissist looks around their empty room and concludes that the entire world is deeply flawed, entirely ungrateful and cruel. It is never, ever their fault. The delusion is absolute. This extreme isolation accelerates the rotting process. Without the friction of normal human interaction to keep them grounded, their eccentricities mutate into full-blown madness. They have lengthy, bitter conversations with themselves. The hatred they harbor for the world begins to consume them from the inside, acting like a slow-moving, psychological flesh-eating virus. You might hear updates about them through the grapevine, and the news will always be incredibly grim. They are suing a neighbor over a property line, getting banned from local stores for abusive behavior, or completely estranging their remaining children. The path of destruction they leave behind in this final stage is messy, desperate, and remarkably tragic to observe. This is the point where many survivors struggle with misplaced guilt. You might wonder if you are cruel for staying away while they decline. Let me be very clear with you. You are simply honoring the boundary that keeps you alive. A drowning narcissist will not hesitate to pull you under just to get one last breath of power. Their decay is a hazard, stay far away from it. The neurological stress of maintaining a false self for decades eventually breaks down their physical body, too. Stress hormones like cortisol have been flooding their system for years. The chronic bitterness manifests as severe physical ailments. Their face sets into a permanent, hardened scowl. The dark, ugly energy they carried inside is now deeply carved into their face. They die long before their heart actually stops beating. The vibrant, capable person they could have been was smothered by their ego decades ago. What remains is just a biological machine running on the fumes of spite and resentment. There is no inner peace, no quiet reflection, no wisdom gained from a life fully lived. There is just an endless, horrifyingly empty void. To stare into the eyes of a narcissist in this final stage is to look into a psychological abyss. You will not find remorse or a hidden well of love they were just too scared to show. You will only find a terrifying blankness. The lights are on, barely flickering, but nobody is truly home. The human soul that was supposed to inhabit that body has starved to death entirely. This is the ultimate, terrible justice of the universe. They spent a lifetime treating other people as disposable objects, and in the end, they become entirely disposable to themselves. Their own mind betrays them, creating a private hell that no one else can fix or enter. The mask they wore to fool the world has permanently melted, taking their entire identity with it. I need you to take a very deep breath right now. Let the heaviness of this dark reality wash over you, and then let it completely go. You do not have to carry their sickness anymore. Witnessing their inevitable cognitive rot is the ultimate proof that you were never the crazy one. You were just caught in the blast radius of their agonizing, slow-motion self-destruction. Their tragic end is your definitive closure. You do not need an apology that they are literally incapable of giving. You do not need them to see your worth, because their vision is irreparably damaged by the rot. Your closure comes from accepting the brutal truth of their condition. They are profoundly broken, fundamentally empty, and completely beyond the reach of your love. Every ounce of empathy you poured into them was like pouring pure, fresh water into a toxic, leaking barrel. It was never going to fill them up, it was only ever going to drain you dry. Now, you get to take that incredible capacity for love, healing, and deep resilience and finally turn it inward. You are a survivor of psychological warfare, and you have won your freedom. Look at the stark contrast between your trajectory and theirs. While their world continues to shrink into a bitter, paranoid delusion, your world is expanding. While their mind decays under the suffocating weight of lies, your mind is clearing as you embrace the truth. Healing hurts, yes, but it is the vibrant pain of a muscle growing stronger, not the rot of a soul dying. Please do not waste another second mourning the illusion of who you thought they were. That person was merely a highly curated projection, a ghost that never truly existed. Grieve the time you lost, grieve the pain you endured, but do not grieve for the monster who chose to rot rather than evolve. Your beautiful life is waiting for you out here in the warm light of reality. You possess something they can never, ever steal from you, no matter how hard they tried. Your authentic self. Your ability to connect, to feel joy, to evolve, and to empathize are the exact neurological superpowers that will heal your nervous system. Their brain is actively shutting down, while yours is eagerly rewiring itself for peace, happiness, and profound connection. Step out of the shadows they cast over your life. Refuse to be a casualty of their decay. When the guilt tries to creep back in, remind yourself of the terrifying void you saw behind their eyes. Remind yourself that you cannot save a sinking ship by drowning yourself alongside it. You fought incredibly hard to get to the surface. Breathe the fresh air. You deserve to live. Share this knowledge. Let this understanding be your emotional armor. When you truly see the pathetic, decaying reality of a narcissist's endgame, their power over you completely vanishes. They are no longer terrifying masterminds. They are deeply broken prisoners of their own toxic biology. Pity them from a great distance if you must, but never let them touch your peace. As we close this chapter today, I want you to make a quiet, unshakable promise to yourself. Promise that you will never again sacrifice your sanity to stabilize someone else's delusion. You are stepping into a future defined by radical truth and unapologetic self-worth. The heavy chains of trauma bonding are broken, rusting away alongside the fake reality they built for you. The ultimate tragedy of the narcissist is that they spend their entire life running from the truth, only to have the truth patiently wait for them at the very end. They chose to be feared rather than loved, and so they will die entirely alone, trapped in a rotting mind. You survived the darkness. Now step into the light, because the best part of your beautiful life starts today.